If I can ask everyone to please take their seats. So first of all, welcome everyone to our Fireside chat that's hosted by Mizuho's Women Network. I want to thank Kinnery Armstrong and Casey Walls for putting this event together in recognition of Women's History Month, so thank you. Look, I am incredibly honored to welcome our special guest this evening, Mahoko Hara, who is the Senior Managing Executive Officer of Tokyo Century Corporation and Executive Chair of Aviation Capital Group. We've had the pleasure of working closely with both of these companies. Tokyo Century is not only a Mizuho sister company, but also a house bank account for the Tokyo office. And Aviation Capital Group is an important Mizuho client all around and is covered by the aviation team here at Mizuho Americas. Now, Hara-san is one of the most senior women in aviation globally, and he's one of the most senior Japanese women in the banking and financial sectors in Tokyo. This evening, Hara-san will discuss her career journey with us, the role of women in the aviation industry, and the current geopolitical issues as they relate to aviation. I'm very much looking forward to hearing Hara-san's insights. Welcome, and now I'll turn it over to Andy Waddington, who will be the moderator this evening. So welcome and thank you.
Thanks, Michal. Appreciate it. Look, great to see you again. Thanks for joining us. I know you got off a red eye this morning, so
that's right. Thank you.
We promised to go easy. Very excited to hear what you've got to share with everybody. So we'll just dive straight in if it's okay. So just starting kind of with the background and how you started your career. Of course, you've been through banking. You moved into asset financing a little bit there. And then latterly, obviously, focusing more on the aviation side with Aviation Capital Group. So what first interested you way back when in a career in banking? And going back to that experience, as a woman started out in a male-dominated industry, how did you kind of cope with that and feel around that?
Sure. So I started my career that year following the year that Japan introduced the Equal Opportunities Act. That was back in 1987. That kind of makes me feel very old. But back then, and Japanese companies still do this, but they hire university graduates on a dual track. One's a career track called Sogo Shoku, and then the other is non-career track, non-career, which is mostly administrative and assistant type roles. So I was hired as a career track person. But just to give you an idea, in my year, there were 300 plus university graduates hired as a career track, out of which only 8 were women. Probably after year 3, half of them kind of left the bank because they weren't getting the right opportunities with the bank. I was actually very fortunate because I was assigned a role in the headquarters of the bank. This is Dai-Ichi Bank, which merged into Mizuho Bank. I worked in the capital markets department of the bank. Back then, Eurobond issuance and Swiss franc bond issuance were very, very popular among Japanese corporates. And with my language ability, I was able to dive right in, working in the team, working on documentation as well. And I had a great boss at that time, a great mentor, that were able to really give me a role for me to advance. So I probably was one of the very fortunate ones to go into that. Why I picked banking? I don't know, it's just a very popular industry at that time. Japanese banks back then were AAA rated, and they were expanding globally. And sort of working in project finance, traveling around the globe, just kind of interested me. I just dived in there.
I feel the same. That's how I started out. So tell us about the move to Tokyo Century now. What was appealing about that move in particular? And that role gave you an increasing exposure to aviation and aircraft as an asset class. Although I know your father, I believe, worked at Japan Airlines, so you probably had a good feel for the kind of the industry a little bit. But tell us about kind of that move into Tokyo Century.
So my father did work for Japan Airlines, and I had the great opportunity of moving abroad with him with his overseas assignments. I spent a portion of my elementary school days in London and then went to high school here in California. So that provided me with a really great experience. But having said that, I tried to pick a career that was unrelated to my father's job, something different that none of my family members had. So I picked banking. So I spent a good part of my career in banking, in different parts of corporate banking, investment banking. But latter half of my career was in securitization. So I was involved in one of the very first securitization structures in Japan. And I really loved working in that area, sort of working transactions, I think most of you know. Coming up with a proposal, pitching to clients, working through tax accounting issues, setting up SPCs, all of that takes a year and a half, and once you get there, it's such a fulfilling thing. So I just loved the job. But after doing that for like 15 years, so my job had been always on the sell side, kind of pitching products, proposals to clients. I kind of felt that I wanted to be on the buy side, kind of looking at opportunities as an investor, looking at investment opportunities, acquiring companies, and actually being more fully involved in the operation of companies. And at that time, the CEO of Tokyo Century was actually my first boss, which I mentioned. That was my mentor. He asked whether I wanted to join Tokyo Century, and he was looking for someone who would look after our strategic investment side of the business. Sort of my mandate was to identify a field, a growth area for the company. So I worked on a couple of M&A deals outside of aviation as well, in shipping and others. But my focus really had been since like 2012, the last 10 years in aviation. We made an investment in J Telesis. I think Mizuho also supports the company as well. That does supports the aftermarket market for the aviation industry, and also made an investment in Jetstar Japan, a low-cost carrier in Japan. That really helped us kind of gain knowledge of the value of the aircraft assets, right down to the parts that are in the aircraft and engines, and also learned the operation of airlines. And then we moved on to forming a joint venture with CIT. Back in 2014, acquired about 50 aircraft. And then opportunity arose in 2017 when we came across Aviation Capital Group, ACG, the then shareholder Pacific Life, a California-based life insurance company. We heard that they were wanting to partially exit their shareholding. So we dived in there. We're lucky enough to become a minority shareholder, and after 2 years, we acquired the entire company. And I worked on the acquisition, and from there, I've been assigned the executive chair role.
Great.
So it's been a very exciting journey.
You were given the role of building out a sector, and you clearly went ahead and did that. So aircraft leasing itself is relatively specialized global industry. Which part of your career do you think best prepared you for your role now as executive chairman of one of the largest leasing companies in the world in aviation?
Sure. So I got engaged in the aviation industry relatively later in my career, although I've been focusing on it for the last 10 years. I haven't really grown up in an industry, so I can't say I'm an expert in industry, but I am surrounded by great experts that know inside and out of the aircraft and of the industry. So I continue to learn from them. But what I contribute is from my relatively diverse career background. I have a good kind of sense of risk management, a strong financial background, strong organizational management skills. And I think that helps me kind of lead somewhat from the behind, perhaps not from the front, but kind of herding all the experts that we have in the company. So, aircraft leasing is our company is very interesting in that we have technical people, engineering people, legal people, finance people, all working very closely together on every single deal. So that's what I really like about it. And my role is to really get those people together and herd them and to kind of guide them in the right direction.
Okay, so perfect
together.
segue to the next question, I guess. So you've obviously been involved in a lot of team situations over your career, both as a member and as a leader. What ambitions do you have for the teams that you manage with at the moment and work with, and how are you going to measure the success of those teams ultimately?
So just talking about the company itself, hopefully we'll continue to grow after this the crisis is over and market starts to recover. But really, size is not really a priority for us. I think we just need to focus on managing our portfolio very smartly, cleverly, and continue to improve the quality of our assets. And that's where I guess the Mizuho team, Vinod and his team, will help us a lot in. So that would be one success. But just generally, organizationally, I think a success is where all the employees kind of have a good sense of where the company is going, understands fully what the strategy is, and really people feel a sense of involvement and can come up with new ideas all the time to improve how and enhance the business. And I lay a lot of importance in that. And I think one good example can be seen in our ESG working group. We actually have an ESG working group within the company that consists of members that are really younger generation that we have within ACG that are kind of rising stars. And they are really excited and talk and come up with great ideas on how we can contribute to the kind of global ESG initiatives, at the same time kind of contributing to our aircraft lessor business as well.
Right.
So that kind of thing I would like to continue to kind of push forward.
Yeah, it's certainly at the forefront of the industry right now. So just going a little lighter, on a more personal level, tell us about being a Japanese expat based in Southern California, and kind of having lived through another New York winter, I can think of much worse places to be an expat. But what are some of the differences in terms of the cultural side between Japan and the US, and how often are you able to get back to Japan to see family and friends, etc.?
Yeah, sure. So just don't get me wrong, I love New York. I love coming here all the time. It's so exciting. But having said that, probably Southern California is the best place for expats to be. I have not heard of one expat that complains being in Southern California. It's sunny, beautiful beach right there. And a big Asian community as well. So, we have access to great Japanese food, Asian food. So no complaints there. And I guess the differences, is that, people in Southern California have a better work-life, balance. In a sense, not to say that people in ACG don't work hard. I think they do, but I think they have a better balance there, which I kind of envy. Also, ACG is delivered a pretty small company. It's about 125 in total. We have about 100 in California. So we have a kind of a small family type organization where we can quickly get together, make quick decisions, and that's very different from where I used to be in Japan, a big organization. I would say Tokyo Century is pretty nimble. It's not that bureaucratic, but still there's layers that we have to go through. Whereas in ACG, it's pretty much a tightly knit organization, which I very much enjoy. Yeah. And your question as to how I split my time. The initial intent was to spend 2/3 of my time in the US and 1/3 in Japan. I haven't been able to do that for the last year and a half because of quarantine restrictions in Japan. But now that's been lifted from March, I hope to be able to more frequently go back to Japan and go perhaps spend 1/3 of my time back there, see my family and friends.
Yeah, envious. So when thinking about diversity and inclusion in a Japanese corporate setting, what do you feel are the biggest challenges and priorities out there?
So I see a lot more Japanese women advancing in Japan as well, which I'm happy to see. But having said that, we just still lack the mass, the critical mass. When we try to think about who to promote into management and much higher senior positions, we just are lacking the sort of number of candidates really, and that's due to the fact that the percentage of female hires have been so low, as I mentioned. It's grown since my days, but it's still only a small portion of the whole hires, so that needs to be improved. At Tokyo Century, we aim to hire at least 30% female university graduates, but we've actually achieved 50% in the last couple of years. So we've done well, so we need to continue to do that so that there'll be a lot more candidates. And also I think we need to do better at hiring mid-career, which we do, but not to a great extent. So we need to hire people at mid-career, pay them adequately, and then give them equal opportunities.
So we're obviously here tonight as part of Women's History Month, so I have to turn the topic to women in aviation. So I'm interested to hear, how do you view your position and role as one of the most prominent women in the industry? And then as you think about that, what changes do you think need to come into the industry to kind of increase the talent pool that it has in the sector? It is one of the male-dominated sectors, like banking, so I'm interested in your perspective on that.
Yeah, sure. So I am a little embarrassed when you say I'm the most prominent person a female in aviation, because I've said I'm only in this business for 10 years or so, and there are quite a number of female, very successful female in the industry. And I continue to learn from them as well. But as I said, it still is a very male-dominated industry. I don't know why. Maybe it's just the sense that aircraft are for boys, anything transportation, rail, aircraft are for boys, I don't know. But so we need to kind of gauge more interest from the female audience and how fascinating the industry is. And as I mentioned, it's aviation aircraft leasing is truly global. We have 90 airline customers in 45 countries. We deal with airlines around the globe, on the legal side, technical side, everything, marketing side. We have very successful female marketers that cover Latin America and China as well. So we just need to get out there more and let female, know how fascinating the industry is. And in order to do that, ACG actually supports or is intended to establish a fund to support women that are studying in aeronautical engineering as well, and particularly in developing countries of Latin America and Africa. And we're planning to support that through funding their studies as well.
Great.
So hope to create that mass again.
That's great.
Yeah.
So what advice would you give to women starting out in male-dominated industries? You've clearly been very successful coming through too. And as a leader yourself, what is the advice you'd give to other women leaders in other roles and situations similar to yours?
Yeah, so just in general, just kind of establish your own work style, your leadership style, which doesn't have to follow the traditional way of thinking as well. This is something that I say to my Japanese female audience. I don't know if it resonates quite well with the US audience, but I always say you don't have to follow the vertical type leadership, and you can do the horizontal type leadership. Vertical meaning, a strong leader, top down, decisions are made, and just kind of follow me type, kind of well, traditionally the male type leadership.
Alpha.
As opposed to horizontal leadership would be something that works through the organization horizontally, hearing views from different people, and balancing those out, forming a consensus, forming a framework that people can follow, and then kind of guide people from there. And I think that kind of leadership in general, it differs by people, but in general, I think that works better for women. So, and that seems to resonate with a lot of female audience that I've spoken to.
Good advice, as they say, it takes a village. So, so we've got a few more minutes, I think, but given the current geopolitical environment that we're operating in here, perhaps you can just quickly share a couple of high-level views in terms of how it's affecting the industry that you're operating in, aviation. It's clearly very topical right now, given what's been going on.
So obviously our industry, aviation as a whole, has been in a very rough patch for the last 2 years. But we were just coming out of it. We were, looking a bright future, and then Russia came, so we're still trying to work through things. A lot of things are developing right now as we speak, so we'll see how things pan out. But aside from Russia, we are seeing a lot of recovery. We're seeing a lot more demand, a lot of passenger travel, especially in the leisure short-haul travel area, because ACG, 96% of the aircraft that we hold is narrow-body, single-aisle aircraft, which are used for short-haul travel. So it depends very much on the leisure travel, which is picking up. I'm sure people around you as well are starting to book holidays for the summer, which I'm starting to see. And airlines are really rushing to procure aircraft because the demand is so high. Not necessarily all around the globe, but in a lot of areas it's recovering strongly. So I think we're very optimistic going forward.
So as a leader through a time like that, how have you learned to manage these kind of challenging, unpredictable events? And have you kind of got any standout kind of advice for people in terms of managing the unpredictability around some of these things that have happened in the past?
Sure. I think it's important because everyone's uncertain and a little kind of less confident than they would be in normal times. So I think it's very important to give people confidence about their judgment and what they're doing, and kind of try to encourage them to come up with their own solutions, which we can quickly discuss and come up with a quick decision going forward, which we're pretty much doing on a daily basis. But we have good expert people within the organization, so it's really to encourage them and give them a mandate to do what they think is right and guide them correctly.
Empowerment.
Yeah.
So look, we're kind of running out of a little time, but to end on a lighter note, you're obviously in the aviation industry. It's a bit of a techie question from an aircraft guy, but interested to know where you'd like to travel most, and what's your favorite aircraft to travel on?
Well, I love traveling. I love traveling around the globe. I've traveled to different countries in Europe. Italy is my favorite, but I traveled in countries in Asia, all around the globe, Africa as well. So that's all been great. I haven't done a lot of traveling in Central and Latin America, so I think Costa Rica, Peru, Argentina are at the top of my list right now, which I hope to
Hopefully they'll
go.
open back up.
Yep.
And we can,
In terms of favorite aircraft, getting a little technical. So as I said, our company is mostly narrow body, smaller aircraft, not so exciting. But among that, I like the AA321s, Airbus 321s, which I actually traveled from Orange County Airport to New York last evening. It's a great aircraft. Great technology, but for long haul travel, I like the 787s and the A350s. Very spacious, very comfortable aircraft. I particularly like actually the Finnair A350 aircraft that flies from Tokyo to Helsinki. It's a beautiful aircraft. Unfortunately, I used to take that for my travel to Dublin via Helsinki. But I think they're not able to do that flight now because they're not able to fly across Russia. So we'll see how that goes.
times they change.
Yeah, exactly. So lots going on. But,
Another techie question, the minimum take-up, no, I'm joking. So I think we have some time for some quick Q&A. So I don't know if anybody's got a question in the audience. There's one here.
Hi, thank you. Those remarks were really interesting. I'm curious what your perspective is on some of the lasting changes to travel post-COVID. You talked about the pickup in holiday travel. How do you think about business travel? What's your perspective on where we land, 5 years out from now?
Sure. So people always talk about the fundamental change in how people work and, fundamental decline for business travel demand. I don't really see that, and I really certainly haven't seen that for people around me. They're starting to travel as soon as quarantine restrictions are, lifted in various countries. People are starting to travel. So I think that's going to eventually pick up. It's going to be much slower than the leisure side of things, domestic travel. But I would say it's hard to set a time, but I would say by 24 it will fully recover. It'll be on a recovering trend as long as there's no strong variant coming out. It will be on a strong kind of recovery trend in 23, and then full recovery in 24. So that's what I think and what I hope. But as I said, our business is mostly sort of shorter haul, so I hope the recovery is much sooner than that. And as I said, we have order book that starts in 2024 that we're trying to place to airlines, and we're getting a strong demand from there. So I think some kind of industry-wide, there's scarcity of aircraft and a lot of demand in those years going forward.
Hi, Hara-san, it's Renee. I just joined the banking securitization team last year as an associate, so I'm still at the early stage of my career. And I want to seek your advice for people at the early stage. You've already had a wonderful career, but I'm curious to know if there's anything you think you would have done differently, at the early stage.
Let's see. What I've done, curious, probably expand my horizon a little more. I was kind of focused on my area a lot at the beginning of my career. But if I had done a lot more networking, kind of discovering other areas of the business at my earlier stage of career, I think that would have helped me even more, I think. So it's important for you to, spend your time and develop your expertise in where you're starting out. But also at the same time, kind of, poke around, people, kind of develop your network, speak to people in other areas, legal people, accounting people, all of those people that would help you gain a deeper understanding of everything that surrounds what you're doing. So that would be the advice I give you.
So you really have a unique point of view being a Japanese expat woman. I mean, you spent most of your life here growing up in the United States working for a Japanese company in the US. What are some of the learnings or challenges that you've experienced through blending both kind of cultures and any kind of takeaway from the intersectionality of the Japanese and American, especially also being a woman?
Just simply, I think you just need to be a good translator, and not just in terms of language. That's usually not the crucial issue. It's more about perception and understanding of an approach to issues is very different than in Japan than here. So you need to be a good interpreter to gauge that gap. It's usually not, the two sides are not that apart when you find out. It's just a matter of kind of giving a deeper insight into what the other side is thinking and approaching things, and then, and try to gauge that gap. That's pretty much been working quite well with ACG and Tokyo Century. And I don't, on a daily basis, don't feel too much of a gap. But really having the right people, I have a great team of expats on my team that really gauge that gap as well, as well. So I think,
I like that thought. Translating culture and body language as well as just plain old language. It's very true, yeah. So I think we've probably run out of time. So look, thanks so much for coming. Thank you for sharing
Thanks
your
for having me.
perspectives and views. On a personal note, obviously delighted that we worked so closely with you from the Mizuho family. So I have to say thank you from everybody for being here and sharing everything with us.
Thank you very much, Matt.